Conservative candidate for the Mayor of Doncaster, former Conservative MP for Don Valley, Nick Fletcher. A very good evening. Welcome to Talk Drive. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, and thank you for having me.
So you're standing for Mayor of Doncaster. Who are you up against?
The other two, well, I would imagine obviously Labour and Reform, but they've not put their candidates forward yet, so we will have to wait and see.
And when will that be, my friend?
I'm not sure. Obviously, the elections are the 1st of May next year, so the campaign will start properly just after Christmas. But, yeah, I'm extremely excited about it. I'm a Doncaster chap, lived there 52 years, and we definitely need a change, and I believe I'm the person to bring about that change.
I had a car crash that made the front page of the Mirror in Doncaster. I got hit by a drug dealer. He got 11 years in jail. There was a boot full of drugs. It's a fantastic story. Nick, let me ask you something that annoys all sorts of people who phone this show about the Conservative Party, and we'll try your credentials out straight away. People after a Tory come on this show will say they absolutely don't understand how appalling a job they did in the end, which is why we have got this bunch of whatever they want to call them over the last 5 months. We had Tom Tugendhat on earlier speaking a lot of sense, but the problem for the Tory party is the incompetence of your last government has allowed us to be in this position, and many people feel bitter about that. What do you say to that?
I can understand there's an awful lot of people unhappy over 14 years. I think we managed to upset a huge proportion of the country on so many different levels. But we had so much to deal with, especially in the 4.5 years that I was there. I was in their Parliament for 3 months, and obviously we had to deal with COVID and then with the war in Ukraine and so on and so forth. But there's no getting away with it. We did let people down. We didn't do everything that we said we should do.
What did you not do? Because I think it's really nice to hear a politician, a Tory politician, not say, I mean, you've said it, don't get me wrong, COVID and the war in Ukraine, but that is not an excuse. What you've identified, which you're right, is that people feel you let them down. Your new leader says exactly the same. As the candidate, the Tory candidate for the Mayor of Doncaster, what do you believe the Tory party failed to do for the British people that they promised?
Immigration. That was the number one thing. It was immigration. We let too many people into this country. I believe the reason why we did that is I think the Treasury believed that they needed people in this country to get economic growth. We obviously promised people more police, we promised people more doctors, we promised people more nurses. COVID had a huge effect on the workforce. There's an awful lot of people, especially I would have thought in close to retirement, who realised that they could actually get away with living on less and maybe not come back to work. They've probably thought that they've done their bit, and I think we had an issue there that needed to be addressed. But I've been in business for 20, 30 years now, and it's just putting people in to do jobs where you're not making any money. Is just no point in doing that. And I believe that's what we were doing. We were bringing people in to just do jobs, to just turn over the same amount of money.
Let me tell you something that a lot of people find quite shocking. This is a personal view, not anything to do with talk, so I'd love your take on this. Here's what I don't understand. If you're the next Mayor of Doncaster, right? We've got 3 million people claiming benefits in the United Kingdom, which is a massive, massive drain. I am a massive fan of the welfare system that was set up to help people who can't help themselves. And all the lefties will say to me, yeah, but they're all mentally ill or disabled. No, they're not. No, they're not. Let's say 1 million of them are on benefits because they don't want to work, because it's a career choice now in our soft country, right? Here's a theory. I said this to a Tory the other day. He looked at me like I'd fallen from the moon, to be honest, on my head at a very quick speed. We're having people come over here to do jobs. Hospital porters, whatever. I'm not talking about doctors and nurses. We have no processing system which allows people who are taking their PISS out of us to get it, but the ones who are coming for work are put into a hotel and then we send them to work, and yet we're paying people from the taxpayer's pocket to sit and do nothing. Why don't we say to the people we're paying on the dole, get off your backside and give us something back for what you're getting. It'll get something on your CV. It'll give you the enthusiasm to believe that you can achieve something. It'll make the people in this country who are working feel that you're part of it. Why is that? Why did the Tories not look? Why were they not addressing those sorts of things that really matter to people? Benefit scroungers, people taking advantage. You're right about immigration. I was brought up I'm so glad that you've come. I was brought up, it was the Tory government. I voted reform. Should I tell you why? Not just actually about tax. We've got no military after 14 years of you lot. We had no police. I don't care what anybody says. There's now a fear of crime on the streets. I want a government to be strong, and I found it really interesting doing this, that the left and even parts of the Tory party would say, oh, reform's far right. It's not. It speaks the language that old-fashioned Tories used to speak. I will say that to you, Nick, just being honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with that. I don't think I'm far right at all. I think there's the country, or there's a movement that's moved to the left, and I've stood where I stood on my principles. I believe in law and order. I believe in everyone getting up in the morning and doing a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And I think it's hugely important that we get these people off the dole into work, because it just does so much for you. I spent an awful lot of time on men and boys issues and how men are feeling, just feeling undervalued. And one of the best things that you can do with a person is to give them work. It gives them value. You give them value, they get respect for themselves, they start feeling good about themselves, and they can start actually contributing to this community.
Self-worth is really important, and giving something back. I'm completely
hugely important, and we need to do more with that. And Mel Stride, in all fairness, I mean, as I say, I don't mind saying the Conservative government got it wrong in quite a few different areas. But Mel Stride, over the last 12 months that I was a Member of Parliament, was working really, really hard on this. And we've got to get people to work. But I think one of the biggest issues is that we put too many barriers in for employing people, and we put too many barriers in the way of people coming off door and into work. And when you've been on unemployment benefit, or whatever you want to call it, for such a long time, I think it's really scary for people to step back into work as well.
It's just, when I left school, mate, I'm 59. When I left school, you went to work or college or university. I'm afraid, but people hate me saying this on the left. Now you can go to work or college or sign on. It was never meant to be a career choice. I'm happy to pay my taxes to help people. Now, talking about immigration, moving forward, standing as the Mayor of Doncaster, I'm interested in you because I want to know if the Tory party's changed. Robert Jenrick stood to be leader of the Tory party and said we should leave the European Court of Human Rights like that. Many millions of people in this country agree. It seems to be this revered body that was created 70 years ago, and a bit like the NHS, isn't fit for purpose. Now, today I woke up to the news that I never thought I'd read. Germany, for Christ's sake, Nick, Germany has said that it could well quit the ECHR to finally get a grip on migration. I ask you this, as the next Tory candidate for the Mayor of Doncaster, why hasn't Cammy Badenoch come out and said that? Because I don't understand. The ECHR is getting in the way of us as a country doing what is right by its own people, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a 10-minute rule bill put forward when I was in Parliament, and I voted for us to leave the ECHR. I think people are concerned about us leaving the ECHR because it does put simple things in. Your right to freedom of speech, your right to get married, your right to own a home, your right to work, all these different things that it puts in there. So I think if you take that away, then the left will jump on that straight away. So we need something to put in place at the same time.
Why do we not? Why can we not? Why can we not govern and manage our own selves to behave in a decent way? Why do we need to be told by a body that isn't in this country? We're an island. I mean,
we don't. Yeah, we need a British Bill of Rights. We need something for people to get hold of and say, right, that's it. And then it can't be interfered by outside courts. Everything that happens within Parliament becomes sovereign. Obviously, we're all still part of an international world. I know it's never quite as simple as that. But as we saw with the Rwanda flights, with the pyjama injunction, it just really infuriates the British public. That was the whole point of Brexit. And then when they see things like that happen, because the ECHR gets in the way of it and stops us doing things, it just infuriates people. So I think to scrap the ECHR without something in place would be foolhardy. I don't think you get the backing of people, of the country as a whole, because the left would turn it into something that it's not. But I think if we put a British Bill of Rights in there, then we could say, right, we're not just scrapping the ECHR, we're putting this in place. This will still give you all the protections that we need as individuals.
I agree with that.
It will stop European courts getting involved.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But what a British Bill of Rights, as in my opinion the ECHR should be, is to provide that care. What it should not be is what it's become, which is an excuse and a vehicle for overpaid left-wing human rights lawyers like our Prime Minister to block decisions from a democratically elected government. I wasn't a fan of Rwanda, but it's not civil servants' right to take the government to court, and it's not the human rights lawyers at 9 o'clock at night on £800 an hour to block. I find it. Two more things about the Tories. I mean, I was a massive Boris Johnson fan, but there is absolutely no doubt that one of the big problems, one of the real big issues in this country is net zero, right? It isn't just me who says, of course there's problems, but have we not got other issues right now? Starmer, I mean, Miliband, I think, is probably the most dangerous man in the world. It's not going to happen by 2030. Do you think the Tories under Johnson and latterly under Sunak went too far in that direction and didn't concentrate on matters in hand? Because net zero is about as popular, honestly, as treading in something. I promise you, people are not in... They're not. Not on this station, not by a mile.
I think the biggest issue with net zero is that we're 1.1% of a global problem, and China and India, their countries are growing faster. They're taking work from our country because our energy prices are going sky high. We are complying and we're pushing towards net zero, and it's just making us completely and utterly unprofitable. And so we need to look at it. I believe in looking after this planet. I think everybody believes in looking after this planet, but we shouldn't do it by killing our own economy. And there's so many other things that I believe we can do without making life so difficult for individuals. And I think that's what we need to be looking at.
It sounds terrible, and it sounds almost sort of just we're concentrating on one thing. I like the fact that Great Britain has been built on the fact that it's always tried to do its bit. We've proven it on numerous occasions. But I do think we're getting to a seminal point, Nick, where people in this country need to feel that their politicians, A, listen to them, and B, then, I mean, I get... This call will resonate with me forever. It was about a year ago, and a guy just basically came on and he said that maybe 6 months, and he just said, look, I work 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. My wife does the same with 2 kids. I call them jams, just about managing. He said, I've never broken the law. I've never ran out, never done anything. I've never got much money left over. I try and live my life correctly. But right now I feel about 7th in the queue. He said, people come into this country and do better than me. People come out of prisons and do better than me. People who commit crime and don't go to prison and do their work from home or whatever it is. He said, I feel like, why the hell do I bother living my life correctly when I get kicked in the bits? And I think that's a really important message. That's what I've been talking about.
Yeah, it is. I understand how people feel like that. I felt like that myself, which is why I got involved in politics to try and change these things. I mean, Rwanda wasn't going to be the be-all and end-all, but it was definitely going to be something to stop this. And one of the things that, I mean, it happened in Doncaster. We had illegal immigrants in our hotels in Doncaster. I worked behind the scenes to get these hotels emptied, and we managed to get that to happen. But yeah, we've got people there who've got air conditioning. I mean, they're not getting room service, don't get me wrong, but they're staying in 4-star hotels. And we've got people who are on minimum wage who are really struggling, and they are doing 40 hours a week. I go and see these people as a member of parliament, and I see these people because I live amongst them. It's extremely difficult. But what we have to come up with real answers. Now, as I say, we had one, at least we had a start of one with Rwanda, and it just proved it was party politics when Keir Starmer cancelled that policy without even looking at it himself. Within a day... And
without with respect... I mean, there's 20,000 people that have come to this country illegally since he took office. You lot have done such a bad job. He could have been elected by saying absolutely, Jack. You talk about priorities. I'd like to pick you on this as well, if I can. Certainly in Doncaster, this will be very, very relevant, right? See, I've got a question. Oh, I've got to do that to you in a minute. I find this abhorrent. Labour's own policymakers will tell you that 4,000 pensioners will die of the cold this year. Now, I don't know whether Labour is just pure socialist or callous, or they think these people won't be around to vote for them. But I cannot, as a voter, as a human being, sit by and not speak out when I hear that we're spending £13.5 billion on foreign aid still. And if you took, ready for this, if you took 4.3% of that, that would pay for the money that the Labour Party are going to make by freezing pensioners to death. I don't understand it. What's your party going to do for pensioners?
Well, we need to look after them, that's for certain. But one thing that you are seeing now is what people have had to live with in Doncaster for the last 5 decades. You've got a government there playing party politics. Why did they take the money off the pensioners? Because most of the pensioners vote Conservative. Why are they after the farmers? Because most of the farmers live in Conservative constituencies. And this is what's happening. They play party politics. They do not care about anybody. Even if you're one of the minority groups that they say they look after, they don't care for these people. They just want their vote, and they're only ever interested in getting in power. And we've had this in Doncaster for years, for decades of it, and that's why Doncaster has always suffered. It's time for change. It's time for people to come along and be doing the right thing for the right reason, not playing silly party politics. It's disgraceful. The country's seen what's happened. As I say, we've had 5 months of Labour in government. I've had 5 decades of it in Doncaster, and we've had enough.
See, now that's really interesting, because I'm going to finish, and it's good to have you on. First time you've been on the show, really appreciate it. I'm going to finish with a text, because this sums up entirely how I feel. Jez, has Kemi Badenoch even taken over as leader of the Tory party yet? Because apart from a few mediocre appearances in PMQ, I've hardly heard a peep out of her. She should be out on every single media outlet every single day, ripping this disgusting and appalling government to shreds. And I completely agree with that text. And I would say this to the Tories. I know they've got to rebuild and there's no policy. This is the time that the Tories need to show themselves. And when Tories say, oh, Farage is all bluster, yeah, but because he's good at the PR thing, he too has to find some meat on the bone. But I think your leadership, you've come on and you've done a great job. I think your leadership should be out saying that it's appalling about pensioners, it's appalling about veterans, it's appalling about business tax, because that's how you make growth. It's absolute. I find it astonishing. Did you hear what Mike Graham told me? This is so ludicrous, Nick. This is what we're dealing with. I'll tell you how woke the House of Commons has gone since you left. Do you know about the Christmas crackers this year in the House of Commons? They've had the removed. I'm not winding you up. So that it's neurodiversity. Now, I'm sure Carolyn Taunton's right. She says for her kids that's important. But can we please get a bit of sense back? And if I ask you to give one message to the Tory leadership, they need to get off their backsides and really resonate with people, seriously, because this Labour Party is there for the taking, and Reform are doing all the talking, mate. I really mean that.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. I'll be going down to Westminster tomorrow to see Kemi, obviously to kickstart my campaign. And yeah, I mean, we've got to get out there. We've got to tell the people that we've had a tough few years. There's no two ways about it. But these elections next year are extremely important, and especially most of them are local elections. And we need the right people in the right places, and that's why they need Nick Fletcher for the mayor of Doncaster. Because if you get me for the mayor of Doncaster, I will change this town. I will change this town for the better.
Isn't one of your MPs in Doncaster, Ed Miliband?
Oh, we've got them all in Doncaster. We've got them all in South Yorkshire. Honestly, we've got 14 Labour MPs. We've got a Labour mayor of South Yorkshire, and we've got a Labour mayor of Doncaster and a Labour government. They need a voice. They need a Conservative voice, and they need somebody who's local, who knows about knows what it's all about, living in Doncaster, and knows what's the best for Doncaster.
Nick.
And the people of Doncaster need to vote for me. All
right, well, listen, we've given you a platform. You do me a favour, not for me, it matters about me, but you make sure you tell Miss Badenoch that they need to be vocal and get out there, because that's what my viewers and my listeners want to hear. Nick Fletcher standing as the Tory candidate for the mayor of Doncaster next May. Thank you for being on Talk Drive.